I'm here with my dog, my teammate. I'm super hyped to have a girl here. Two-time WNBA All-Star, Kelsey Mitchell. What's good with it?
Imagine working 7 years with the same group, seeing coaches arrive and endure a season of suffering due to a loss, successively and only when you're prepared to give up. A novice enters and gets stressed. It all seems so unreal, doesn't it? That's precisely what transpired with Indiana Fever and Kelsey Mitchell.
Finishing with her off hand. Passes ahead, Wheeler extra feed. Oh, that was pretty. Mitchell on the drive, splits the double team, draws the foul.
For many years, she was an individual warrior, achieving all-star stats that don't demonstrate any team success.
I'm a Fever girl.
You're a Fever girl.
7th year. You know, it's been a difficult year for me from a standpoint of like personal. You know, I lost my dad 5 or 6 months ago, so that was tough. And I look back on my year now, Dub, and I'm just so grateful to be here again, because I never thought, you know, for one, to be doing it without a parent.
However, something fundamental changed in 2024. What actually took place behind the scenes? Moreover, how did rookie save Caitlin Clark? Mitchell's career endured due of. Everything is revealed in this interview.
So we just gonna hop into it. We know who you are.
Yeah.
We know you a bucket, but a lot of our listeners, they may not know who you are, what you about, what school you went to. You really are true definition of a easy bucket.
For 7, the Fever missed the straight seasons. Years of continuous reconstruction for the playoffs. 7 years with various instructors, distinct game and systems, strategies, none of which ever succeeded. Nevertheless, Mitchell maintained. She continued to grind without stopping, demonstrating that she was among the greatest league scorers. However, basketball is a game that's not merely regarding your personal excellence, able to score 20 points every night, but if your people stop paying when the team doesn't win, as well as in a league like as the WNBA, where everyone is in the spotlight. Mitchell wasn't receiving she deserved the recognition, but it wasn't. She is only being held back by the team's performance. Imagine going through 4 distinct head coaches over the course of 7 years, each time when a new coach takes over, it's like beginning over new tactics, new ideas, and fresh expectations that you are unable to create. Chemistry that isn't necessary to create a enduring identity is draining, and Mitchell was anticipated to be It was annoying to see the franchise's face. Transcends comprehension.
You and Eve both been here for a number of years, right?
Yeah.
Y'all done been through the tough years. Well, you really gotta grind it out. You know, tough season.
What, you in 7 years here?
All 7.
All 7, you ain't never been to another team.
Girl.
She had every justification for leave. She may have requested She may have looked for a team to trade with, where she was already winning, would not need to transport as much of the burden, but instead she remained, and that devotion was as agonizing as it was at times become a part of who she was. Wasn't just another Indiana athlete. She was from Indiana.
Team, not individual, team.
And anybody that want to compete and be a winner, you know,
It's about team.
It's about team. And so I was always open to having like really great pieces around me, and I just think it was unfortunate. And I just think the hand I was dealt was like, you know, I trusted in the organization in different ways, from like the management and the people that they brought in. And so I just kind of like trusted the wave. And so I look back.
Group rather than a single team. And anyone who wishes to participate and be a winner is aware that teamwork is key. Regarding the team, thus I was always willing to having such amazing artifacts around me, and I simply believe that was regrettable. And I simply believe that the hand I was handed said, I'll take what you know, with the company I trusted, in ways that differ from those of the management and the individuals they introduced. So I just kind of I looked back because I trusted the wave. However, let's discuss what that really is. Intended for her on the court, even though Mitchell, everything was against her, continued to hoop at a high level starting in 2018. She was averaging more than 16 points in 2023, not only as a big volume, but also per game. Scorer, she was also effective, lethal from three and capable of producing her own shot and possessed one of the fastest. Her game was released in the league, designed to succeed, but success never appeared to locate her troops, but it wasn't. As if she had no intention of changing anything. She entered the gym first and left last. She was playing the leave type of game, doing all in her power to join the team. Better, but a single WNBA star cannot solve all problems. You must have the appropriate system, the correct coach, you must teammates who fit your fashion sense and last for years. Years ago, Mitchell lacked that. 2023 arrived, a season that for the first time, she had a glimmer of hope as time was acknowledged as an all-star at last, something that ought to have occurred. She posted her career figures years ago, demonstrating that she wasn't merely getting by. She was doing well, but the fever persisted. Weren't at the proper location, they were getting better, maybe, but they weren't candidates, and Mitchell was aware of that. If she was ever going to be able to, watching the playoffs, after which just when she was getting ready for another season, something occurred that rocked me to my core. She lost her entire world in March 2024. If you have ever lost a parent, father, you understand that pain of that nature doesn't go away. It transforms and transforms you. Doubt everything, and for Mitchell it caused her to doubt basketball. She referred to her father as her original, greatest admirer and harshest critic of her, the person who had encouraged her to be fantastic, but now that he was gone, she didn't determine whether she could continue to play. Wasn't sure how she was meant to concentrate on the game when her thoughts were grief-stricken. She even acknowledged in an interview she considered giving up basketball completely. The enthusiasm that had motivated her for so long. I felt far away from someone for a long time who had consistently used basketball as this was uncharted territory, a safe retreat. Each time she entered the court, every time she thought of her father, game whenever she sensed his absence. And that's when an unforeseen Kate Clark showed up. So let's be truthful, at the time Caitlin Clark was chosen by the entire basketball world's fever held its breath because she was the most enthusiastic. In WNBA history, rookies weren't merely keeping an eye on her performance. They observed her to see how would teammates respond if they embraced? Would there be conflict between her and Mitchell, and other veterans feel marginalized? The novice would receive all the focus, as well as the veteran who had been dedicated during the most difficult years would be forgotten, but that wasn't the case. Clark's presence accomplished something that nobody, as anticipated, it gave Kelsey Mitchell new life. Mitchell, for the first time in years, wasn't by herself. She wasn't alone. Dangerous danger. She wasn't alone. Player that the defense needed to concentrate on, and Mitchell, with Clark sweeping the floor, began receiving more candid glances than never considered it before. Clark. Each squad was aware that if they stopped, Mitchell was shut down in Indiana, accustomed to being stuck with two people, compelled to make difficult shots. However, defenses could no longer afford to. That the seriousness of Clark's shooting, and Mitchell was given the floor by the passer in a manner she had never encountered, and she flourished, and her numbers soared. Become more confident when playing. Greater efficiency, greater aggression, and the Indiana Fever were abruptly no. They were a team rather than a bottom feeder, which everyone was eager to see, and let's not disregard the psychological component of this. Change while you're going through something as terrible as losing you need people, you need help, parent. People in your vicinity who remind you that you're not by himself. And in Clark, Mitchell discovered a teammate that not only showed her respect, but there was no tension when I looked up to her. Rather than a power struggle, there was mutual. Mitchell didn't regard Clark as someone was stealing her attention, so she viewed her as a collaborator in creating something unique, which she explained the village that is the Fever locker room. helped her when she most needed it. Not only were these teammates, but they were family, and Mitchell benefited from that. Overcome the discomfort and return to the court and reaffirm her devotion to the. Naturally, the game wasn't flawless. Sailing there in the beginning of the season were growing pains that Clark needed to get used to. Mitchell had to get used to the WNBA, accompanying a real star for the initially, but the All-Star broke it. It was obvious that this duo was unique. They calculated the same average scores for each game. 19.2. They both consider that it. There wasn't a single player who stood out. The other was feeding off of them as equals, each other improving one another for the first time in her professional life, Mitchell wasn't merely a single talent stuck in a box. Within a losing system, she was a genuine contender, which is what makes this narrative is so potent, because when you consider this, Caitlin Clark didn't simply alter the dynamics of Indiana's on-court, altered Kelsey Mitchell's perspective completely. This wasn't only a new thing in basketball season, it was a second shot at rebirth, a motivation to keep going, and as the season enters its second half, Kelsey Mitchell is still a mystery. The playoff moment is finally approaching. For her entire career, she's been waiting. We're going to learn that soon, so we have discussed Kelsey Mitchell's hardships, the years of annoyance, the coaching shifts throughout the next 10 years of. Additionally, we have discussed playoff droughts, the incident that almost forced her to walk outside of the game, but when Clark got to Indiana, everything changed. So let's see how Clark's presence has impacted this duo's performance, opened a completely new level in Mitchell's performance, and the reason the Indiana. It is possible that Fever is about to something noteworthy when you introduce you're not a player like Caitlin Clark. You're just adding another scorer. Someone who forces change is a game changer. Defenses to radically reconsider how they go to the field. Additionally, Mitchell had never, ever encountered before Clark. Mitchell was the main weapon of attack for. She was supposed to produce her in Indiana. Own shot each and every night, frequently being forced into a challenging situation, double-teamed, disputed jumpers, and infrequently receiving simple scoring chances. Right now for the Mitchell is, for the first time in her career, obtaining her life's easiest buckets. And Clark's court is where it all ends. One of those uncommon people is Vision Clark. Players who take 2 steps to view the game. She doesn't just state the obvious up front. Pass. She predicts where her teammates will be prior to their arrival. That elite playmaking has evolved. Think about everything for Mitchell. Prior to Clark. Mitchell, he was always battling to build space. Defenses fell on her due to the absence of Clark. Is now another significant perimeter threat. Requires so much focus that Mitchell frequently finds herself exposed in some places she never used to let her guard down. Can no longer concentrate solely on Mitchell, because Clark will burn them if they do, either via her depth or her profound shooting. And the figures support Mitchell's. The shooting percent has increased dramatically. She's reaching career highs this season. 3-point in field goal percentage, and total effectiveness. Why? Because she's not, for the first time, being compelled to take poor photographs with Clark. Mitchell is putting defensive pressure on, obtaining a catch-and-shoot situation. She has the appearance that elite scorers aspire to, no longer merely producing for oneself. She's getting advantages from one of the greatest passes the game has seen in its history, but the most bizarre thing is that Mitchell isn't simply prospering as a result of Clark's. She's succeeding at playmaking because Clark has a contagious confidence. When years pass and you lose it, it's simple to feel exhausted, and Mitchell used to be exactly there. The 2024 season, despite the fact that she was playing well, despite the fact that she wasn't, you could see it in her all-star. There was a gap in the interviews. Joy comes from losing basketball games. You become exhausted from basketball, and then Clark. Into the locker room during the day. Clark didn't simply accept the difficulty of making Indiana better. She thrilled about it, so she brought in vigor that was hard to overlook. She played without fear and without giving up. Mitchell, who never offered an explanation, had experienced each lost season. Imaginable, couldn't resist the sensation that vitality. And all of a sudden, the shift was visible. Mitchell began to play with additional fire. She intensified her onslaught on the hoop, playing with more assurance than before. Not only was she receiving better shots, but was acting as though they were genuinely felt that victory was at last feasible, due to the fact that for the first time in years, in fact, and it wasn't merely, it was about the body, not the numbers. Swagger-related phrase used by a player who had been toiling away for years in her career's darkest moments, at last having the opportunity to play basketball once more. And Clark also observed it in. Clark discussed in the conversation how much she knew Mitchell's game and respected it. Kelsey had been the lifeblood of the illness long before she arrived, and rather than attempting to replace Clark, made it apparent that this was a structure, anything that respects each other. This is made possible by the chemistry. Let's be honest, the duo is so unique. When people talked about the WNBA debut of Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell was not discussed. Everyone was interested in how Clark would manage the league's physicality. They discussed if shooting her would translate. They conjectured how she would cope with the stress of being the WNBA's most anticipated player. What no one anticipated, Clark and Mitchell would grow up to be among the league's most deadly duos. But here, both of us are averaged players. The same 19.2 points per match in. Consider that this was a case in 2024 of Clark entering and taking over. Two elite guards were pressing Mitchell, reaching new heights with one another. Clark, the new wave of rookie sensations. Mitchell, the experienced veteran, demonstrating that she was more than just she was a fantastic player on a poor club. Fantastic player, and they've changed the perception of Indiana as a team that observed as a team that everyone desires to observe, since, let's be honest, Indiana is no longer merely another WNBA team. They work as a team and seem to be on the threshold of something extraordinary. Can, in fact, the Fever win a championship? This is where the big question lies. We are aware that the temperature has subsided from. Unrelated to the must-watch, we are aware that Mitchell and Clark are among the greatest league backcourt duos, but is this merely a lighthearted tale, or is Indiana truly, if we are being truthful, a true contender? Although they haven't arrived yet, they still require time, they still require experience. More work needs to be done on this. This is what we do know about the core, however. For the first time in 7 years, Indiana is at last heading in the correct way for the Kelsey Mitchell's first time isn't merely she is playing for the stats. Something more significant, which is why she opted to remain mindful that Mitchell had departed in her free agency. She might have left the illness behind and joined a group that was already vying for a title, but instead she examined what Indiana was constructing, and she examined what Caitlin Clark joined the group, and I believe the decision she made was worthwhile. It is the effort I make on my own regarding the company's presence for. I hope that during the next 7 years it will reach a stage when I would be present. She remained, since for the first time in her profession, she at last has faith in let's face it, the future of the Fever. That sums up exactly where the team is led by a legendary. We've seen backcourts in the WNBA before, dynamic duos that alter the course of events, but what Mitchell and Clark are constructing in Indiana is unique, since it's not only about talent, it's about perseverance. It concerns two players who are questioned, in many ways joining forces too. The scariest thing is to prove everyone incorrect. They're only beginning, so if you're not taking the Fever seriously, however, you ought to be, because of the manner in which, as the plot unfolds, it seems as though the start of something legendary. Thus, this is Kelsey Mitchell's career deal. was so close that she might have walked, disappearing or worsening into obscurity. But the entrance of Caitlin Clark altered. Mitchell is doing well in Indiana, is once again visible, and for the first, the Fever is the worst it has been in 7 years. The question is, contenders, what will happen? Can this pair then lead Indiana to a? Will Mitchell finally win a championship? I want her to have the postseason success she deserves. Please leave a remark below to hear from you. How far do you think this can go for Indiana season, as well as whether you enjoy this breakdown? Click the like button and sign up for more unique WNBA material due to. Believe me, this is only the start.